What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Wing and Tail Boys podcast, your Northeast hunting and fishing destination. I'm Chris,
And I'm Angelo.
and we're your hosts. Join us as we navigate the woods and waters of the Northeast, sharing our passion for the outdoors.
Whether it's land management, outdoor recreation, hunting, or fishing, we're going to cover it all. With 40 plus years of experience in the Northeast, we'll provide insights, tips, and stories to help you make the most of your adventures and help you experience the wild.
So, tune in, grab your gear, and let's hit the woods together. And always remember, success is just a commitment away. What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Wing and Tail Boys podcast. I'm Chris.
And I'm Angelo.
And we are joined here again by an awesome guest, Kevin Creeley. How you doing tonight, bud?
Dude, I'm doing great. How are y'all doing?
I can't complain. Ange?
I'm doing great.
Doing great, feeling great, looking great. It's all fantastic. So we have Kevin back on today. Last time he was on, we talked about feed trees, acorns, all that good stuff. And also when we joined you, we talked a little bit about like hunting pine barrens and pine forests and flatland and stuff like that. Real quick, you've been a guest here before, but for those who maybe missed that episode, can you just give them the quick baseball card version of who Kevin Creeley is?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So my name's Kevin Creeley. I live in Virginia. I host a podcast called the Mid-Atlantic Outdoorsman. I'm on the same podcast network that Chris and Angelo are on, the Sportsman's Empire. I've lived in Virginia my entire life. I've been hunting here for, about 16 years. So since I was about 14, that's about when I got into hunting. I deer hunt a ton. I usually take off about the last week of October through late-ish November. I turkey hunt a ton. I try to hunt 4 or 5 states a year. I like public ground and private ground. Don't really care which I'm on. Just love to chase turkeys. And just an idiot who likes to hunt and does it when he can,
Okay. When you can, I mean, if you get to hunt a lot, you're fortunate.
I do, yeah. I get to go a pretty good amount. I mean, I'm pretty fortunate. I've been blessed with the career that I have. Is very we get a lot of leave, and then so I don't know. I'm pretty fortunate the amount I get to get out in the woods.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's Angelo's been pretty fortunate this year too. He's gotten out quite a bit, and I've kind of been a weekend warrior trying to make the most of what I can. And I gotta say, when we were on, I believe it was your podcast, we were talking about TSI work and like different types of timber stand. I think that's where we got into talking about the pine forests a bit. And I was able to take some of what you taught me this year. And while I haven't been able to punch a tag on a buck yet, I mean, I reached out to you, I think it was like a month ago now. And I was pumped. I was like, dude, I got to thank you. And you're like, for what? I was like, I went down into this, this pine forest, and it was basically all rhododendron and pines. And there was a stream that ran through it. And I was like, yo, Kevin said, if I'm in the pines, get to the water and they're going to follow it. And the second I hit that water, it was just 100 yards where there was just a rub every 10 feet. And I sent you some of those pictures, man. I was fired up. Haven't been able to locate him yet. He's been a tough one to crack so far, but hopefully I still got time. This weekend, today is November 26th. This Saturday opens the rifle season for deer here in Pennsylvania.
Okay, right on.
So
let me ask you real quick. What's the topography like in that area where you were hunting those pines?
Mostly flat with some dips and grooves and stuff like that. It's nothing too steep or nothing too topographical, I guess you could say.
Gotcha.
Nothing too crazy.
So that's kind of what I was picturing. That's one thing I've definitely noticed with pine barren forests is like, it seems like, what I hunt is typically pretty flat in the pines that I hunt. And, it's like there's not a ton of habitat diversity in a pine stand, right? It's just pine trees. So there's not a ton to funnel deer movement. So you'll find sporadic sign, but it just seems, and I couldn't tell you like the biologic reason why, but it just seems like if you can find water in those pines, like a creek or something to that effect, or river bottom, whatever, that those deer are going to follow it. It's just like, it's like almost like they use it as navigation because they're just as lost in the pines as we are. I don't know.
I mean, when you're walking through a pine forest, I mean, my experience is it's either pines with no undergrowth, or you're in hardwoods with briars and thickets and whatever. Like you don't normally find them together.
Right.
So the way I look at it is when you're in a pine forest, you look straight ahead, all you see are dead limbs and they're all whacking you in the face. But if a deer could walk along the water, typically there's some space down there. And I typically find around here that the pines grow where there is water. Like if there's a hardwood forest and there's a river running through it, even if it's not a pine forest, the river is lined with pines. And then once you get away from the wet is where you get into the hardwoods, the oaks and stuff like that.
That's hilarious because it's the exact opposite here.
Is it really?
Yeah, it'll be barrens of pine, hundreds of acres of pines, thousands of acres sometimes. And then you drop down into the creek bottom, and 90% of the time it's going to be hardwood trees.
Okay.
It won't necessarily always be like productive hardwood trees. Sometimes it'll just be like sweet gum and poplars, stuff like that. But
Right.
typically you have your hardwood trees around the creek bottoms, and then everything else is pines.
Gotcha. That's
And most
funny.
of that comes from the fact that a lot of the forest that we have has already been high graded or low graded. They've taken the trees out, and like you said, they don't usually touch near the riparian zones. Anything that's
Right.
near water, they're not going to touch it because they don't want to, get any corrosion, and then they have the land is not going to be as productive around those waterways, and they get clogged up, and then you're probably going to have a less of a productive waterway there if you are using it for any reason, whether it's a landowner who's using that water or whether it's for small tributaries of fish and everything else. So they usually leave those alone. So I would assume that that's what it is. Maybe they took the trees out of that area, clear cut everything, and then maybe planted pines so that they could harvest them. And then
Right.
over time, they just left it, and they haven't been in there in a while.
Yeah, that's typically what I see. It's just a lot of barren pine forest, but they'll harvest it and then replant it in pines. And like we discussed and beat the dead horse on the last show, when I had you as a guest on my show, actually, they can't harvest to a certain distance from the creek by law in Virginia. So that's where the hardwood trees will get left.
Sure. Now, I'm curious to know what they're going to do because obviously everything has a lifespan. So when trees pass a certain level of maturity, they become less strong, less safe. So I'm curious to know how they handle that when they drop. Do they just let it grow back as it wishes, or do they get in there and plant new stuff as that stuff starts coming down? Because eventually those pines are going to come down.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I got
I don't
no
have
clue.
the answer for it, but it's a great question.
Yeah. I mean, we just saw it here. Like my wife and I we live in the woods now. We bought a house in the woods, and we don't have any trees like really growing over the house, but we have limbs that overhang the house. And just Thursday night into Friday, we had this massive snowstorm come through. We ended up getting like somewhere to 10 to 12 inches of all soaking wet snow. And all night long, we just had limbs falling everywhere. I was standing outside with my dog. Next thing I know, a limb falls and hits my neighbor's house. You could hear the crash.
Jeez.
My wife got woken up in the middle of the night because a limb fell and broke our deck. You know what I mean? So it's
Jeez.
like, yeah, so trees, as they're younger and they're stronger, they can handle that weight. But as they get older and past their maturity, same thing as a buck. A buck, it's like a bell curve. They have their quality, their peak, and then when they start coming back down on the other side, they don't look as great. They're not as strong. They don't
I
make
think
through the
what some
winters
land
easy.
management companies should do, and some states or conservation groups should do, is allow the public, if they can, the public to go in there and start gathering deadfall, whether they want to use it for whatever. You guys want to use it for fuel to heat your house? People still do that, whatever. Just people want wood to maybe burn in their backyard. They should open up maybe a couple months during the off season, maybe February, March, before anything really starts growing back, and it's still kind of, there's probably not a lot of people recreating in the woods. They should let some people go in there and just gather deadfall, and I know that starts a whole bunch of other safety things, or people walking around with chainsaws and whatever else. But
Imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to trust people. You know what I mean? We need to be able to do this. That's what people did for thousands of years.
So
And
one of the pieces of public,
we manicured our forests, and we need to get back to doing that. No one's
Mhm.
doing it.
one of the pieces of public ground that I hunt in Virginia it's separated into units. The whole thing is. So when you check in electronically, you check into a specific unit, and then you have to highlight the activity that you're doing: squirrel hunting, deer hunting, duck hunting, whatever. And it's pretty cool, actually, because on the app you can see how many people are in each unit at any given time, so you know where the pressure is. It's pretty sweet. But and there's a cap for like each unit, depending upon the size of it, how many people are allowed to hunt that zone. And they have like 10 or 12 firewood collection areas that you can check in and go chop and collect firewood. It's pretty cool. I've never gone and checked in and done it, but I've seen it on the app, and I'm like, that's pretty neat. And every once in a while, I'll see a couple people checked in. I'm like, they're in there chopping trees, I guess.
I don't know that I'm really all for people being tracked, but I mean, I get it. We're probably getting there. You know what I mean? I mean, that'll probably be something that's more state of the art as we kind of get further into, either more people hunting or less area for people to hunt, where people are going to have to start checking into different hunting units, and then
Yeah.
that's just what's going to happen with technology. All you have to do is pop on an app and say, "Hey, I'm here," and then maybe it shouldn't let the function of other people seeing exactly where you are on that property.
So it doesn't tell you where they are,
but
just the
maybe
unit that they're
exactly. Maybe like
Mhm.
the host,
Like this 1,000 acres, that 1,000 acres type
like
of deal.
God
So
forbid
yeah.
somebody gets lost, somebody gets hurt. Maybe like the host
Yeah.
of the application would be able to pinpoint people's location for emergencies. But
Yeah,
I
the
mean,
entire
we're
reason
probably
behind that
getting
one
there.
is that specific public ground is an army base. So it's an
Oh,
yeah. It's an accountability thing. Like you have to be checked out 1 hour after dark. So
Yeah.
like
so there's
1
no
hour
tracking
after.
deer in the dark.
No,
You're
there's
coming
no
back in the
tracking
morning.
unless you can get it done in 30 minutes and then get the deer out ASAP. You have to come back
Mm-mm.
in the morning to retrieve. So it gets tricky, but yeah, don't make bad shots.
Yeah. So I actually, I'm going to come back to this because I think you're going to laugh about it, honestly. But I have a question to ask you about something. But I'm not even going to hint that. I'm going to get back to it later. But since the last time you were on, we have dropped collectively between the three of us and our cousin Daniel, who's not here, and his father, who's not here. We've dropped a lot of deer. Angelo, I think, has taken another 3 since you were on our podcast. I think you've taken another 3 since you've
That's
been on
great.
our
Yeah.
podcast. And I'm a little offended because this is now the 3rd episode since I shot my deer, and I don't have a deer under my face, Angelo.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
I guess if that's how you want to do it, we can update our board, our Tri-State Trifecta board. But I'll tell you what, and this is not going to stick on there, and I only have one more safety pin or whatever.
And these
but
thumbtacks.
I'll figure something else out here. Here's a roofing nail.
There you go. Perfect.
We should be able to get it in there with that. So Christopher's on the board for the Tri-State Trifecta. But
There we go.
since we're updating it, Kevin has completed the Tri-State Trifecta.
Well,
so congratulations to Kevin.
Did you shoot one in Virginia too?
He just shot one in Virginia. That might be
good shit. I missed that one. I missed
that.
that.
That might have been a spoiler there. We're gonna get that. We're gonna get that story right here. And because I make the rules, I am 1 away from the Tri-State Trifecta. I was guiding my brother in New York.
He gets a half a deer for this
and
one.
My brother shot a buck while I was guiding him. So I'm taking it.
Right on,
but
dude.
we're probably
Heck
going to
yeah.
end up going back into New York. I still have a tag I need to fill. I'm going to do some snow tracking probably. I'm going to wait for some snow to get up there. The plan is still to maybe hunt PA at some point, but I'm also thinking about maybe also going up north and hunting the north woods of Maine, maybe, and doing a trip.
Nice.
Maybe at some point in the middle of December or early December after Thanksgiving.
That sounds cold.
So I'm thinking about what I want to do. I was also thinking about maybe going out to the Southwest. My cousin lives in Arizona. He's got some. He's got some free time.
Who lives in Arizona now?
My cousin Joe lives in Arizona right now. So
really, I didn't know he
moved.
moved.
Free time out there. I was thinking about maybe seeing if there wasn't a over-the-counter rifle hunt that might be somewhere close to the Southwest. In Arizona would be preferred, but it's possible that I might do something a little bit warmer. So we'll see. I don't know.
Nothing wrong with that.
So basically, what Angelo hinted at was don't ever allow him to play banker in Monopoly. Is basically what just happened. My question is, first off, why isn't Daniel's face up there? And number
we
two,
can put Daniel's face up there, but I mean, he's obviously not going to be hunting multiple states. This is for people who are admittedly hunting multiple states.
That's fair. Because my next question was, if we give him that deer, do you also get that deer? Are we double dipping here? Like, what's it?
It's all good fun. And
no,
like
of course,
said,
of course.
I wasn't hunting. I was standing right next to him.
Kevin, listen, if you haven't,
any misses, I mean, if he would have missed, I had my
Fair.
gun with me, so I was
Yeah.
looking at the sight.
If you haven't had a chance to listen to that podcast, you have to go back and listen. This was like this kid, his brother, my cousin, second time or third time ever out deer hunting, spot and stalk, belly crawl up on this buck, bro, was an awesome story.
Heck
And
yeah,
and
dude.
he shot his deer in New York the same day I shot my doe. And
Nice.
I can't even. There's really no story for me to tell because I just had my rifle while I was scouting and just saw a deer and shot it. So
Heck
like
yeah.
it wasn't even like I was out. We were on our property. We were just looking for something, and I saw her, and we let her have it, basically.
So I
So
have
Yeah, heck yeah, man.
I had a neck injury a couple I guess maybe a full week. It was like a full week before we went to New York. So that's kind of why I started to lean more towards guiding my brother rather than kind of putting him in a spot. The original strategy was kind of just put him in a spot and then kind of go off on my own and just check in on him and kind of just move him around as needed. But my neck injury's really flared up and it's been really bad. And I haven't even hunted since New York too.
Oh
And
man, that sucks.
so we'll see how much that hinders me going forward. But I've been getting a lot of treatment. My mom's a reflexology massage therapist. She's been treating me. I went and got some acupuncture done. Tomorrow I actually have another follow up appointments with a chiropractor, and I'm going back to the acupuncturist. So I'm hoping to get healthy again before the rest of the season,
Yeah, for
before I
sure,
get back
dude.
into the back end of the season, because it's really crazy. But yeah, so I mean that story's gonna be cool. We're gonna probably release. I was hoping to get the episode out earlier, but because of my injury, there was a lack of footage that we were getting. Started off kind of heavy, doing a lot of like interview style stuff, and kind of fell off. I was like, I got to trim the weight in my pack. I've got to take some stuff out of my pack. So the
Yeah.
first thing to go was the camera. We had the GoPros and stuff like that. So what we're actually going to do is my brother and we're going to film a reenactment of the stalk on his deer, and we're
World
going to
War
put
II
that in.
style.
We're going to put that into the video just to make it better. I mean, I text my brother today as I was editing, and I said, listen, I said I almost don't even think this is postable without like some footage of us doing your
Mhm.
deer. So we're just gonna probably film like a little reenactment, not of him shooting and stuff like that, obviously, but we. I mean, basically, what happened is we were driving, and in the back of a field in a wildlife management unit that's over there, we saw a deer, and as I'm kind of just barely enough time to really kind of see it, and we were going around a turn, we wouldn't have been able to see it anymore. Picks his head up, and my brother's like, "Buck, buck, buck!" So we pulled over quickly. We got out of the truck. We ran through a field and down into a creek bed. So at the very least, I want to kind of get some footage of us just kind of like rummaging through the back of my truck, getting our gear on, getting through the
Yeah.
fields, getting into a creek bed, and then from there we'll just probably do like a loud shot and fade it into black, and then I got some footage of us afterwards, like in the creek bed celebrating. So
Right on. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Now, we were just touching on not being able to night track to this one little spot, and I thought
Mhm.
it was really cool. Your last episode that you posted was titled "Mrs. Midwest Mid Atlantic Outdoorsman," right? And you kind of went through the story of your wife's introduction to hunting and her progression over the last 2 years, and I thought that was a really cool perspective because Angela and I have kind of been joking around about having the Mrs. Wing and Tail or the Wing and Tail girls and talking about what it's like having
Yeah.
their husbands gone all hunting season and
Yeah.
how they live with it, and it was really cool to hear the different perspective of instead of it being that joke of you're gone for 3 months, it was, well, we get to spend 3 months together. And I thought that
Mhm.
was really cool. But one of the things that really got me, I was literally chuckling out loud while I was listening to this. Your wife was telling the story about how she shot that one doe on the food plot, came up that trail that you had cut with your whatever your mower was,
Yeah. Yeah. It's a bush hog, the
the
DR mower.
yeah,
Yeah.
the DR. There it is. And you
Mhm.
said you went both ways and made this nice little rut funnel, like purposely for the deer. And she read the script, came up, shot. And what got me is you guys were trying to find this deer in the dark. And you said, or whoever said that, you guys could hear coyotes howling like 50 yards away. And you're like, maybe we should just come back in the morning. And I just like right there, I just stopped and laughed. I was like, bro, if you come back in the morning, there's gonna be no deer left. Like,
Yeah. You know, I don't know. That particular track was extremely frustrating. At first, I thought she had clean missed the deer because she's telling me she shot the deer at 10 yards. And I'm standing in the food plot, and I'm like, there's no blood here. All right, no big deal. It's a muzzleloader. Sometimes muzzleloaders don't create blood at the shot site. It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
common. Walked the entirety of the food plot, no blood. Asked her where she entered the cutover at. She showed me where she entered the cutover, the doe, and there was no blood there. It wasn't until we were like 30 yards. I just guessed. I was like, well, if I was a deer, I was going to run into this cutover. I guess I'd go this way. You know what I mean? It was like the easiest way to go. And I started walking, and then I found blood. And I was like almost surprised because at this point I was almost sold that she missed.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And then I found the blood. I was like, oh, there's blood. You know?
I knew you hit it.
Yeah.
I knew you hit it.
And then we tracked that thing for 100-ish yards, but it was so spotty. And it did so many circle backs that it just got frustrating. At one point, I had to go back to the tree stand, turn the tracker feature on my OnX app, and then re-enter the cutover to gain my bearings of like which direction I had gone already. And then we ended up ultimately finding the deer after spotty blood. She put a great shot on the deer. Just didn't bleed good.
So it's interesting you say that. And because this past weekend, when I shot my doe, or a week and a half ago, whenever it was now, I shot it with a 308. And when I tell you I shot it at 40 yards, it might have probably been closer to 30. So it was like, it was a very close shot. She was quartering away hard. So I had to put it in just like literally I clipped the back two ribs with my shot, and it ended up puncturing the very, very top of the heart where the veins meet the heart. There wasn't a single drop of blood. I mean, she died within 15 yards. Like she just ran just enough to drop, basically.
Jeez.
But even after dragging her, not a single drop of blood came out of the entrance, and there was no exit. I couldn't believe that. See, I had the same reaction. But then, I was talking to Angelo. She had a full belly of just grass. Everything in her belly was grass, and it was full to the brim. I blew out her belly. I blew out everything. By the time I got her, I mean, you could see it coming out of her mouth when she was laying there. I knew I hit stomach, but it's the only shot I had. I was just in disbelief that a firearm that powerful at that close of a range wouldn't penetrate. Right. And I never found fragments. I never found the bullet. And when I skinned her and did the whole process, there was no exit. So I still have no idea where it went.
That's really bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea, man. That's crazy.
I'm thrown off, but I can imagine the same thing happening where it was a great shot. It was a kill shot, but for whatever reason, whatever she hit or whatever, there just wasn't a good blood trail.
I mean, I can imagine if going through that, if you went through the belly and you went through the guts, like I told you, first of all, you're going to hit the hair, you're going to hit the hide. That alone right there is going to start to mushroom that bullet. Once you get into that wet, dense stomach matter, you're going to probably slow the bullet down a good amount as well. Then once you start getting into the fatty organs, maybe you get into some liver, maybe you get into some kidneys, maybe you get one lung. By the time you get through that stuff, it's probably just in the chest cavity floating, or maybe in an organ somewhere. Once you dump the gut pile, it probably just came out in the gut pile.
Yeah, I'm sure it's there. I mean, I have a metal detector downstairs or somewhere. I'm just curious what it did. Like, I want to know if, like you're saying, did it mushroom like it's supposed to and it just slowed down? Because the entrance wasn't anything to be, crazy about, and it was right where I put it. I don't know, and I hit bone, so I'm sure it definitely fragmented from that. I wouldn't be surprised. But anyway, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the night. You got to go hunt on your family property in New York. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you said it's like 500 acres, 500 plus acres.
Yeah, 500 some change, yeah.
And you did some turkey hunting back in the spring. This was the first time you were on this property. You did some scouting. You went into New York with kind of an idea of how the property lays out, kind of had some pre-positioned pins that you had in your mind that you wanted to go and test out. So with that base knowledge, tell us a little bit about your preparation going into New York. Virginia is very flat, as you've put it in the past. You hunt pancake land, and New York is the complete opposite of that, especially where you're hunting. So what steps did you take to prepare for this, both physically for having to walk these mountains and from a scouting standpoint to be prepared once you got there?
So first thing I did was have Greg Lutzinger on my podcast because he's a hill country animal. And I was like, selfishly, I'm going to have this guy on. I got to record an episode anyway. And I'm just going to pick his brain about hill country rut funnels for an hour and a half. And so that's what I did. And that was nice. That was beneficial. Learned a ton from him, truthfully. And then really just, I mean, physically, I don't know. I work out a ton. I'm not like trying to like toot my own horn or anything. I'm not saying I'm like some stud. No, no, by no means am I an animal.
No, no, no.
But I try to, with my profession, try to stay in good shape and stuff. And I will say though, I'm gonna get off track for a second, but after hunting New York, I walked so much in New York. My goodness, I walked so much. And the topography there is no joke. I mean, it definitely will humble a flatland guy like me walking up and down with a standing sticks on my back, bow in the hand and stuff, and getting into some of those spots. And then went straight from there back to my Virginia camp and hunted for another week. Did some public ground, long walk stuff, and then did some private ground stuff. And I don't eat a ton when I'm deer hunting just because I'm on the go so much. Like I don't eat breakfast. I'll come back and I might have breakfast at like noon. So you could call it lunch if you wanted to,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And then I'll get right back in the woods. And then I get out, have a quick bite for dinner, and then go to bed because I got to wake up at 4 a.m. So when we were at my Virginia camp, my wife told me, she's like, "You're looking lean." And I was like, that's good, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, "No, you look like small." And I'm like, "Oh, well, all right." So when I got home, I stepped on a scale and I'd lost 15 pounds since the deer season started. I was like, good grief. It had to be hills in New York. That had to play a factor into it. But anyway, back on track. Scouting wise, I had some pins that I had dropped during turkey season, like you had mentioned. And so my plan was initially to go straight to those pins and then just uh, kind of that'll give me a baseline. That'll give me a place to start my scouting and then kind of find the most recent information from there. So I had planned a 5-day trip. And then I was actually sitting in a tree in Virginia and the weather was terrible. I had not seen a deer. It was like 10 a.m. And I had planned to hunt that entire day and then wake up early the next morning and hit the road and go to New York. Well, I pulled up my weather app and I was looking at the weather for New York, and it was like the next day was hot and rainy, like light sprinkles all day and like mid 70s. And then after that, there was a massive cold front. It was going to drop into the 20s. And I was like, well, shoot, man, I should probably get there today, go to sleep, wake up, and then just spend a full day scouting while it's 75 and raining. It'd be the best day possible to scout. And that's what I did. I literally, in that moment, got down out of the tree, climbed down, went to my truck, packed all my stuff, and left a day early and drove straight to New York to get there for the crappy weather so I could scout. And then I just spent an entire day and a half scouting. I actually scouted the first full day, and then the next day I scouted all morning and then hunted the evening. And so this 500 and about 20-ish acres is broken into, let me see real quick, 4 parcels. Well, actually 5 parcels. 4 fairly large parcels, considering, and then 1 very small parcel, just 10 acres.
Are they
10
all
acres.
Are they all adjoining, or is it like 60 acres here, 120 acres there, 10 acres there? Okay.
Yeah, they're separated. I don't think. Yeah, no, none of them link. Anyway, and there's this little 10-acre chunk. I had scouted and scouted and scouted and scouted the first day, covered a ton of ground. I found one area. It was a big wheat field that dropped down into the bottom. There was a cut cornfield, and I went inside. The inside edge of that cut cornfield was all maple woods, wide slam open. You can see for 250 yards through that stuff. And then it drops down into like a cedar forest, and it was much thicker down in the cedars. So my assumption was going to be that the deer were using the cedars as bedding, and then coming up, staging in the maples, and then going to the cut corn. That was just like from the terrain that I'm used to hunting. I was like, that's what I would assume these deer are going to do. And on the inside corner of the maples where it transitioned to cedars, so we're about 100 yards off of the cut corn into the maples, right at the transition where it drops down into those thicker cedars. On that inside corner, there was a big scrape. And I was like, this seems like a good spot for a camera. I had brought 2 cell cameras with me, I should mention. And I threw a camera on that inside corner looking at that scrape. And then I left. And then I continued to scout.
Now,
And
sorry to cut you off real quick. You had mentioned cornfields a couple times. Were those cornfields on the land you were hunting?
yes.
And okay, and B, would you call the land that you were hunting ag land, or is it just a forest or a hardwood stand with a cornfield on it?
100% ag land.
Okay.
These properties, like if a property I was hunting was 200 acres, I bet 30 acres of it was timbered and the rest is ag.
Wow.
And
Okay.
that's how most of it was. Very small parcels of timber.
I
And
love
some of
that.
the, yeah, it's fun, man. It's fun stuff to hunt. Um, some of the parcels of timber were much larger, but the portion of the timber I had access to would be like only 20 acres. Like actually where I ended up harvesting the doe, it was looking at a map and zooming out, one of the larger tracts of timber probably in the entire county. But I only had access to about 20 acres of it, just that short stint of maples right before it met the cedars, and the cedars were actually the neighbors.
Okay.
So I had that camera on that inside corner, kind of right on the property line, looking into the maples because that's where the scrape was, right? And I left that spot and I continued to scout. And within 15 minutes of leaving, I had a doe on camera. And I'm like, cool, maybe I bumped that deer and then she ran by, whatever, who knows? And so that's what my initial thought was, like, must have bumped that deer. And then I got another doe, and then a small buck working the scrape, and then another doe, and then another doe, and then another small buck, and then a decent buck, and then another, just all day from 1 p.m. until dark. Just
And they were all hitting the scrape?
they were just passing by that transition. There was
Okay.
one buck that stopped and hit the scrape.
Okay.
And the rest of them just cruised through that area. And there were so many does, dude. I mean, just a ridiculous amount. And so immediately, like, my game plan going into New York, I was thinking, so I get a doe tag and a buck tag. Ideally, I'd like to punch the doe tag first, because if I punch the buck tag first, I'm not going to want to hang around to punch a doe tag. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, well, I can just go back to Virginia and chase bucks. So I was like, if I can get the doe tag out of the way, get the monkey off my back, then I can just chase bucks the remainder of the 4 days that I would have left at that point. So I was right away like, okay, well, that's the spot I need to go kill a doe. There's does cruising by that transition all day. So I was like, perfect. Anyway, continued to scout and made it through the 4 big parcels and then got to the 5th one, the real small one, that 10-acre chunk. And I pulled up and parked and almost didn't scout it because it was just so small. I could almost see the whole track from my window, from like through the windshield. I was like, man, it's just like a little grown-up cow pasture. It's like a 10-acre perfect square cow pasture. It was grown up in goldenrod. And I was like, yeah, I'm sure deer utilize that for like bedding, maybe sometimes, or pass through there. But it just didn't look big enough, in my experience, where I hunt, to hold like a deer herd, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, almost didn't scout it.
Right.
I was like, and then I convinced myself, like, man, scouting day. I told myself today's scouting day. The thing's only 10 acres. It'll take me 30 minutes. Let me just go knock this out, you know?
Sure.
Dude, it was the most insane deer sign I'd ever seen in this 10-acre chunk.
All right, we're gonna pause right there for a second. All right, let's kind of go over a little bit here. So you had gone into New York. You had these either places that you had seen or walked through back when you were turkey hunting, or places you had scouted, dropped some pins, and said, "I definitely want to go check this out."
Mhm.
Up until you hit this 10-acre patch where you saw the sign. Let's pretend you didn't say that yet.
Okay.
What was going through your mind at this point? First time deer hunting here in New York. You walked in, you found a nice scrape. You have some deer on that scrape. Not too sure about the other spots that you checked out between that and this 10-acre parcel. But what's going through your head at this point? You know, you're going through over the topo. You're a little tired.
Mhm.
You know, what are you thinking?
So, really, I had those, like I mentioned prior, I had those previous pins that I had dropped during turkey season, and I wasn't really going to go scout those spots because I had already scouted them during turkey season. Granted, that's during the spring, and we know deer do different things different times of the year. So I knew when I went into those areas, I was going to have to verify. But with kind of how demanding the terrain is out there and how large some of these tracks are, like how much ag you have to walk through before you actually get to the timber, it's very time consuming to scout those 5 properties in a day. So I was really just like, pull up a map, drop a couple pins, shoot to those pins, verify what I'm thinking. Maybe I'm 100 yards off, whatever. Back to the truck, drive to the next chunk. So those pins that I had dropped during turkey season, I was like, I'm not going to go to those today. I've already scouted that, so I just want to cover new ground and either cancel out areas entirely or find dynamite stuff, you know? And that was kind of my game plan. Man, another thing, like to your question of like what was going through my head scouting this new terrain, some of the stuff was just so weird. Like I was walking through the maple woods and I would find beds all over the place in these wide open woods, which deer just don't do that in Virginia, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I'd be on like a north facing slope or like a point out on a ridge in these wide open maple woods. And I'm talking like a worn out bed that they've been using a while. Not like, oh, a deer laid down there for a couple hours. Just wide open. And I was
Mm-hmm.
just like, man,
And
that's so bizarre.
I would assume, because I've seen similar, more so since I've started doing like the forestry business type stuff. We drive to, side by sides a lot through the woods, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times when deer see you on a machine, they don't really care. They're used to
Mm-hmm.
machines going by. So we'll be driving by, and there'll be an incline that's maybe 60 feet above us, and
Mm-hmm.
two-thirds of the way up, there's a doe sitting there right up against a tree,
Just
where
staring at you.
and she's protected from the backside from the rest of the
Yeah.
slope, and she can see everything below her because of that incline.
Mm-hmm. So the biggest thing for me, man, was like this to continually answer your question. It was like I would find really good sign up high and I would find really good sign down low. And through the years of hunting pine bear and stuff, I've gotten pretty good at identifying like, okay, this is night sign, this is day sign. You know what I mean? Typically for me, it's like if it's down in the pine thicket, it's day sign. If it's up on the top on an oak flat, a bunch of scrapes and rubs, and it's worn out, it's night sign. You're probably not going to see that buck there. You can get a picture of him there. Put a trail camera there. You get a picture of him. Probably won't kill him there unless he's chasing a doe or something weird, you know?
Right. Got to catch
So
them
that was
slipping.
probably, yeah, that was probably one of my biggest challenges. I was just like, man, I don't know how to identify this sign. Are these beds that I'm finding just random night beds where they're just chilling out for a couple hours? Or are they actually utilizing this hillside as a bedding area? And then one of the pieces I was scouting, I walked in and I bumped a bunch of does, and they were bedded in a very similar setup to the beds that I had come across while scouting. And it was 2 p.m. So I was like, all right, well, that answers that question. They're using that right now, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, very, very much so.
Okay,
Pretty much,
cool.
it sounds like you found some stuff that got you really excited. You were a little confused in the beginning of the day, and you kind of started to figure stuff out as the day
Oh,
goes
man,
on.
just super overwhelmed in general. Like, I could have went for 10 days easily. 5 days was not enough to consume these 5 properties and learn the
Sure.
amount that you would need to learn, you know? So I
Hmm.
was really just trying to get like most recent information to kill one buck and one doe. That's all I wanted, you know?
Cool.
So I was just hitting these pins and just scouting my balls off for for that first day,
Sure.
really. Um,
Uh,
Go ahead.
no, I think I asked you this question last time with the feed trees and worrying about your scent, and you said no because I'm only looking for doe.
Mhm.
So I'm going to ask you the same question. When you're scouting the day before a hunt, are you concerned about your scent? Are you worried about leaving your scent behind and bumping deer? Like what is your protocol as far as scent is concerned while you're scouting?
So 100% I was. But I had an internal debate about this exact issue when I was scouting these properties. I was like, man, I don't want to leave scent everywhere and just literally bombard all these 5 properties right before I hunt them for 4 days. Like it felt silly to do that, you know, and it just did. And so I was
Mm-hmm.
like, then the other guy on my other shoulder was like, you're only here for 5 days. You need to learn as much as possible. Like, what if you're missing this dynamite chunk over here that you didn't scout because you didn't want to walk in there and booger it up? Well, guess what? You're not going to kill the deer if you don't go in there and learn where they're at, you know? So I think I approached it from a standpoint of like, let me say this. If I'm on my lease and I'm like hunting a chunk that I'm well familiar with, I don't need to go into this specific funnel and verify sign. I already know it's a productive funnel. So I'll just wait for the right conditions and then I'll push in there and verify sign on my way in with a stand on my back and then set up to kill. In this situation, I don't know any of these properties. I have no idea what the deer are doing. I've never been there. So I just felt like it was more valuable to get the information than it was to not and to play it safe.
Okay, I got
Yeah.
you. All right, cool. And you got anything?
I mean, for me, it's nice and refreshing to be able to hear you be able to talk about going in and scouting the property, because for us, obviously, we were only able to. Well, it's not that we were only able to, but my brother and I, we basically only hunted public land.
Mhm.
And when we eventually talked to a couple locals after my brother, I mean, at this point, it's no secret, my brother shot his buck. People were shocked. They were like, "You shot that on state land?" Like, the butcher couldn't believe it. There was another landowner
Wow.
there who was a big. He was a butcher as well, but he sold beef, and he had a lot of acreage and a lot of property that he managed, and he was shocked. I was, the deer butcher that we took the deer to, they get a lot of business from deer hunters, so they see a lot of what happens locally, and they were shocked. So you know hearing that you're having a lot of this deer sign makes sense because, in New York, you've got a lot of people who have, whether it be ag fields or whether it be cow pastures or whatever it ends up being, they have manicured lots. They end up holding a lot of the deer, and a lot of the public land maybe just gets some of the overflow. Like you said,
Mhm.
when you were hunting in Virginia, as soon as the acorns dropped, poof, the deer were gone out of the fields, and then you
Mhm.
can kind of get some of these deer up on these oak flats. But as you just recently mentioned, even a couple of minutes ago, when you were talking about deer sign, you're saying in the thicker cover, you're starting to see a little bit of sign near the bedding areas. That's something that you might be able to get them during the day. But then out on
Mhm.
those oak flats, a lot of that sign is probably happening at night. So
Yep.
now it's like these public land hunters almost have like no chance, and it kind of left a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. It's not impossible, but obviously it makes our lives a lot harder. But you could just see how just a difference in maybe a couple hundred acres, where maybe the public land is a little bit higher up in the mountains. That's kind of a little bit less manageable for people, so they don't purchase that land. And
Yep.
then the lower land, the lower lying areas, the areas around water, the flatter land is purchased by landowners. They manicure the properties, and that obviously is going to be more productive. And you're seeing a lot more sign in those areas. We didn't
Mhm.
see a lot where we were hunting.
And so we're at the point now. You drive to this 10-acre lot. You're exhausted. You kind of got there. You do one of these. Do I really want to? Do I
Absolutely.
really want to go in there? I mean, I got all
No.
these other spots. Do I really want to go in there? Take it away.
No. All right. So, so I'm sure you've probably already heard the story because you said you listened to my podcast.
I have Angelo. I don't know if Angelo has, and our listeners probably haven't. So
Right, right. So I think it's a valuable lesson, regardless what happened on this 10 acres for your listeners, for any deer hunter, man, is that if you have a gut feeling about something and you're really confident about it and you've done the scouting work to believe it to be true, trust that gut feeling, man, and stick with it. Now, let me lead into this. So I scout this 10 acres, this goldenrod grown up cow pasture, and it's dynamite looking, dude. Like, I get out of the truck and 30 yards scrape, 20 yards, another scrape, 20 yards, another scrape, another scrape, another scrape. I counted like 40 scrapes, and they were all just freshly, I'm talking ripped up, like dirt piles around the scrapes. Like the dirt's
wow,
dry. Some of them had urine in them. Like it looked good. And rubs galore, poop everywhere, which, might I add, is my favorite deer sign to find. I don't know about you guys. Poop is my favorite deer sign because it's the easiest one to age. I'm not the best at aging scrapes and rubs, you know? Sometimes it can be a little bit challenging. It's obvious when it's real fresh, but when it's like 2 or 3 days old, it's like, I don't
hmm.
know, you know?
Right?
But poop is obvious. It's like if it's steaming and it has flies landing on it, like, well, that happened really recent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there's just poop
I
everywhere
just
in
scared the
this.
shit out of that deer.
Yeah. It was just everywhere in this goldenrod. And I followed the edge of this goldenrod without going like into the center of it at this point. Now I'm thinking like, okay, this is a bedding area. I need to kind of tiptoe through here, you know. And I'm not carrying a bow. I'm just scouting. And I tiptoe through the edge, and then I see these like scraggly trees that line the whole edge. I'm like, what is that? I'm not used to this stuff. I've never seen an apple orchard before. And it's an overgrown apple orchard. And I'm like, oh, that's freaking cool. I've like read about people hunting these up north, never seen one in person. And so I scout it, scrapes galore in this apple orchard, just ate up and beds everywhere. And then I squatted down in the apple orchard. The apple orchard was at like the highest point of this 10 acres. And there was like windows in all the apple branches that were crossed over where you could see out. And I squatted down in one of those beds and I could see the whole cow pasture. I could see across the street, up the hill, all the way to the neighbor's house.
Wow.
And I was like, dude, the buck could lay here and just be bulletproof. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I got to find the chink in his armor, you know? And there's a ditch that came up the back side of this pasture. So I ended up parking the next morning. I eyeballed a tree that I could climb on the edge of this goldenrod to shoot down into it. Had one little opening, like 30 yards wide, and it was like 15 yards in front of me. It's the only tree to climb in the whole place. And I wasn't going to ground hunt it. It's too thick. And I had to park like 900 yards away. Could have parked the truck and walked 80 yards and gotten this tree. But I was like, that's not going to work based on where these deer are bedding. I parked 900 yards away and I walked up this ditch and I climbed in this apple tree that was the most difficult climb I've ever done.
So you hung in an apple tree.
Yep. A tiny little apple tree.
So, because I was about to say, all the apple trees we have on our property, I don't think there's a single one that's more than 6 or 7 inches in diameter.
Dude, it was about this big around.
Man,
It was about as big around as a coffee can.
You got more balls than me, man.
Dude, I put one stick on the bottom. I climbed up, and then I climbed branches up the right side of the tree, pulled a stick off my waistband, crammed a stick on the side, climbed up that, clicked my lineman's belt around the tree, pulled my platform off my back, started to cram it onto the tree, had to pull a limb saw out, saw a couple little limbs out of the way, and then cram this platform. This is in the dark, keep in mind. And this is the next morning, right? This is the next morning. I cram this platform in the tree. I get up in it. It takes me forever. The sun's like coming up by the time I hang. And then like I'm literally like click my safety harness on, get my bow hung up, and then I glance forward and there's just like 11 deer across from me out in the like that are out in the field coming back into the goldenrod to bed. So at this point I've got like 5 does over here to my east, 6 does over here to my north. Over my left shoulder there's 2 or 3 does. There's like a 2-year-old 8-pointer coming from the field that's behind me, coming back into the goldenrod, and I'm just like, holy moly, I'm in the lair. You know what I mean?
That's
like,
awesome.
I'm in here. Like I got in here clean somehow by the grace of God. I only blew one little doe out on my way in there. And that was it. She was out in the field, you know. And other than that, got in super clean, got set up. And my whole game plan at this point is like, all right, so I'd identified the goldenrod patch as like the doe bedding area. Let me back up 1 second. I forgot to mention the day before I had put a cell camera on that doe bedding area portion of the goldenrod. And all night I got does coming in there and bedding into the next morning. And then they had cleared out. There was no pictures of does for like 2 hours before daylight. So I was like, feel like I can get in there safe. Anyway, back to where I was. So I had verified that that's the doe bedding area, right? I assumed the apple orchard section was where a buck, at least one buck, would have been bedded, right? Because that's where I found that dynamite bed with the really good view and all the scrapes, turds, and all that good stuff. I accessed through that ditch up the backside, climbed to the tree, and my whole game plan is to rattle and pull a buck out of that apple orchard down into the doe bedding area portion. My game plan is like, all right, if I can simulate 2 bucks fighting in the doe bedding area, that should pull a buck out of this apple orchard to come down here to this opening where I can actually shoot him, you know? So like 7:30, 30 minutes after sunrise or so, I pull the horns off. I rattle, break sticks, grunt, snort, wheeze, make tons of noise, hang the antlers up, sit there for like 2 minutes, and I just hear it Brett, behind me. So I turn around, and it's that same 2-year-old 8-pointer that I had seen earlier in the morning. And he's chasing does back and forth in this little field. And I'm like, okay, super cool to watch. You know, it's pretty good 8-pointer. Like, wouldn't have shot him on the first day, but would have considered him on the last day for sure. You know?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so I, at this point, I'm just enjoying watching him. And there's like 5 does, a spike, and him. And they're coming down into this ditch behind me. And then they go back up in the field and they're chasing and just acting ruddy. So I do a complete 180, turn around in my tree, and I'm just watching these deer, just having fun watching these deer, you know? I just rattled with the intention to pull a buck out of this apple orchard, and I spun around in my tree stand like a and as I'm watching these deer, I hear one in the goldenrod in front of me. I can, like, undeniably a deer footstep, you know what I mean? And it's like 20 yards in front of me in the goldenrod, and I'm turned around, and I'm just thinking, damn it. And so I'm just like, please be a doe or a 4-pointer. And I slowly spin back around, like do the owl head thing, you know?
Yeah. The buck comes out.
Dude,
Yeah.
there's just like a 140-inch 10-pointer just standing there, 25 yards broadside, right there in the spot I wanted to rattle him to. Just staring into my soul. And I'm just like, you are the worst deer hunter alive. Like, you came in here with the perfect game plan, and then he reads the freaking script, and you spin around, you're not paying attention, watching these deer that aren't even in a shooting lane. They're not even in a spot you can shoot. You know what I mean?
And there's no one here in this meeting that wouldn't have been watching those deer. I mean, you're in the woods to
He
see
don't
deer.
even have a camera, so he's probably the least likely to turn around. And he
right, right.
That's what I'm
we
saying.
would have been like getting footage, like that deer would have never even came in because of how much movement I put. You know what I mean?
But then again, and I've done this quite a few times. When there's deer behind me, having that camera, I use it as my eyes behind me.
Oh yeah, that's
so
cool.
I'm able to turn the camera around, especially if you have one of those that the screen can turn exactly, and I'm able to zoom in and focus on them and pay attention to what they're doing without having to turn around. You know,
I'm also kind of getting to the point where I'm less likely to spend more time filming. I'm just going to get the animal, and then I don't need to film it for 40 minutes because I use 10 seconds of the clip anyway. So, you know, it's nice to maybe get a little bit more because maybe you'll get a better 10 seconds later. But for situations like this, I mean, just document what you see. Little deer came out. If it really kind of ends up being something that is no problem for me, if I could just swing it, like you said, if I'm swinging to the right, then the camera's in the way and I can't see the LCD screen. If I'm swinging to the left, I could flip the LCD screen, put it up against the camera, point it behind me, and now I don't have to turn around. I can just look at the screen and I can get some extra footage. So I guess that would kind of be in the moment now, letting foresight be 2020 rather than hindsight. If it's to my right and I got to turn around, it's probably not worth it if it's not a deer I'm willing to shoot.
Yep.
Just if it's not, if it gets out of my range, it's gone. I'm not gonna force footage.
So Kevin, at this point, in both podcasts we have been on or done together, you have expressed your disdain for the camera. Have you started taking it out in the woods with you yet, or is that that's
ain't
not
happening.
it ain't happening?
Dude, man.
My camera kept my target buck off my wall this year, so I'm already pissed off about it once. So,
man, I'm good. You know, I have a lot of fun doing the podcast and documenting the hunts this way. I can really tell the story, and sometimes I look back and I'm like, man, if I told this story and then had a video to release, that would be freaking sweet. Like, it would be really cool. But I don't know.
You don't need it. You don't need it.
Yeah, it's so many moving parts to bring that camera. It's more gear to carry.
Yeah.
And then I got to worry about that freaking thing, dude. Like, man, I get shook up at bucks, man. Bucks shake me up bad. I can't imagine trying to freaking get a camera on them and kill them.
Yeah.
I mean, even just the interview style stuff, like you do a lot of stuff like that anyway. Like even if you just had a GoPro and like, said a couple words while you're getting ready, said a couple words at your car, maybe just do like a little 2-minute thing in the tree once you have like some downtime, whether you're getting out. I don't like to do it when I'm getting in. I like to do it when I'm getting out because it's like at that point I'm probably getting
out
and stuff anyway. I'm okay with even that. I mean, I'm literally more and more that it happens, and it's affected me pretty much every hunt I've had this year where I've harvested a deer. The camera has had some influence in determining how that happened, or if I've got it on camera or not. I've had to abandon it, and the one deer that I did end up shooting, the one buck I did end up shooting, I didn't even get it on camera. So, I'm almost even okay with everything but the shot, like you said, right? Like you wouldn't mind taking the camera gear and maybe not like a full camcorder with all that stuff, but even maybe just a GoPro to just do a couple little updates and then the recovery. You know what I mean? I mean, that's a story in itself. And
my problem is I get
that.
It's also important to state that this is his first year, Angelo's first year with the camera too. You know what I mean? So this is the year of figuring stuff out.
Yeah, even just with a GoPro, anything at all.
Yeah. Sorry, Kev.
My problem is I get super into everything that I do. I get like balls deep in everything that I do, man. And I would want to get like the most beautiful product ever. I'm like an all or nothing type of guy. So if I was going to film, I'd want to get everything. Like from making coffee in the morning, walking in the woods, setting up, and like filming the hunt. I'd want to film every deer that I saw
film
every
drone
decision
footage.
that I made, and there's just no way that I could do that without compromising my stealthiness. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
In
Mm-hmm.
my opinion, I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
mean, there's
It's
guys
just
that like
Yeah.
doing it that way, like where they'll set the camera up a couple yards in front of them, and then they'll walk back, and then they'll kind of get them walking down the
it's
trail, and
incredible
then walking
that
away
guys.
from the camera, and then they got to
Yeah,
go back and get
I
it.
feel like half of that stuff is done like, let's say they
After
shoot a deer,
footage.
now they go back and they're filming those like B-roll things, or they have them pre-recorded in like a file
could
somewhere
be.
ready to use when
Very
they
well
need
could
them. You
be.
know what I mean? Now, I will
Very well.
say, I don't know that I'll ever
Still
go in
got
the
to
woods
be, you still got to
without a
film it,
camera again. Yeah,
regardless.
no,
It still takes time.
100%. Yeah. I don't know that I'll ever go in the woods without a camera again, simply because, and we're getting off topic. I'm sorry. We'll hop right back into it in a second.
No, you're
But
good.
I think we talked about this in the last podcast we did together. I have pretty bad ADD. I constantly need to be doing something, moving around. So having the camera in the tree and having something to do that is also productive at the same time, it really just keeps my mind involved in what's happening. But I've also made the decision that the camera will not be the reason that I don't harvest a deer. So what happened this year, when I go in, I have a GoPro. So now we'll talk about this at the end, like my setup real quick. And, because I'm interested in hearing yours. I've heard you talk about your sticks and your hang on a little bit. I'm interested in exactly what you're running. But when I go in, I have a GoPro. I'm in a saddle, but I also run a hybrid saddle system. So I have the GoPro over my head, wide view. So that way, whether I'm facing the tree or turned around in like a normal stand setup, it can get me. And then I have my camera offset so I could bring it between me and the tree, but it's also long enough to bring around the front if I need to, right?
Yep.
So this year I did get a shot at a doe with a bow, but I ended up not recovering. It was the same thing as you, very spotty blood trail, a couple heavy spots here or there, and then basically hands and knees, couldn't find any more blood kind of deal.
Sucks.
But it got to the point where everything happened so fast. I called the deer in. One doe came sprinting into my rattle. Never seen that before. 30 seconds
That's
later,
interesting.
another deer comes sprinting in at the rattle in the call. It was wild. It was the best sit of my life. But the first deer came in. I was going to shoot her. I drew on her, and she never gave me a shot. But it got to a point where I was facing, I'm a lefty, so I'm facing the tree, and she's off the side of the tree this way. And I'm trying to reach behind me to get my camera. And I'm trying to find the camera arm, and I couldn't find it. And at that point, I said, fuck it. GoPro's running. I don't give a shit. And I took, and I ended up taking a shot at the second doe. And it turns out that the GoPro got the footage. My head was in the way. You can't see the actual arrow flight or the impact, unfortunately. But you can see the doe come in. You can see me stop her. You can see me draw. You get the whole nine. So sometimes it's cool just to even look back and say, did I rush the shot? Were my mechanics good?
Yeah.
It gives a whole nother dynamic to information, which is pretty cool. Anyway, let's get back to your deer here. So you wrote the script, you mailed it in, the deer read it, and you forgot the script. So
that's right, man.
So I think this is the point where you messaged me on Instagram and you're like, dude, I just had a fucking monster right there, and he saw me and walked away. Do I move? And I forgot to answer. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie. I saw it, and like I was in the middle of work, I didn't get a chance to answer. So what did you do from that? Like at that point, so you were considering moving, I'm assuming. Did you end up moving your spot?
So first the heartbreak set in, but then I kind of got over it, and I'm like, all right, it's day one. I just rattled in a 140 on the first morning. It's pretty freaking sweet. You know what I mean? I was like, that's not bad. So like hopes are high, I was like, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. So I did sit for about another 2 hours because I was just like, man, I already saw that other buck chasing does back here. Doe's bed here. If just one of them's an estrus, Lord knows how many bucks are in this area. I'll sit tight a couple more hours, And I did, and I saw a little buck and about 17 does filter in and out. Man, let me say real quick that this place is the most deer dense place I've ever hunted in my life. There wasn't a day that I didn't see 50 deer. Like
It's
between
incredible.
morning and evening sit, it was insane. Everywhere that I went, when I hunted the thick stuff, when I hunted the fields, when I hunted the woods, didn't matter. You'd see 40 deer. Like it was nuts, dude.
It's amazing.
Anyway.
And then on public
incredible.
land, it's like barren. You don't even see squirrels. There's nothing.
The squirrels are pressured out.
Yeah, right.
We didn't see, literally total deer seen the whole 4 days that me and my brother were there. 2.
Jeez.
Other than from the
Killed
car.
one of them though.
Yeah. I mean, we can't complain. We got it done, but literally in
If I killed
hunting,
half the deer I saw, I would have killed 75.
on
So
public land, deer that we could hunt,
yeah,
we saw 2 deer. Unbelievable.
man. Well, you still got it done. That's awesome. So anyway, so I move. I got down and I was like, well, I need a pick me up. I was like, so I'm gonna go to that other spot and I'm gonna kill a doe, and that's what I decided to do. And I knew right where to go. There's a little white oak tree, like 20 yards off of that scrape, and wind was perfect for it. So for the evening hunt, I went over there, went back to my aunt's first, got some home cooking. That was nice, and then drove over to this other piece. Um, Walked up the edge through the cut corn, walked up into the maples, right where it starts to drop down into the cedars. There's a white oak right there on the edge. Climbed that white oak. About 30 minutes into the hunt, just covered in deer. There's just deer like 80 yards off, just filtering out towards the cut corn. Does after does after does. And I'm thinking, man, they were all crossing right here yesterday. Another 80 yards over there. Like the whole herd going to cross over there out of bow range. You know, I'm just looking to kill a doe. And then right about like 30 minutes of legal left, I see 2 does off my left shoulder right here coming right up out of that cedar bottom. And there was actually 2 of them. One of them was absolutely huge. These northern deer are way bigger than my Virginia deer. You know,
Yeah.
the one in the back is a tank, dude. And I'm like, I'm shooting that one. I'm gonna let the first one go. I don't even care how big the first one is. First one was still probably 150-pound deer, but I was like, no, I'm shooting that one in the back. That thing is a hammer. And so they start coming in. They get to like the first one gets to like 15 yards broadside right in front of me, and I could tell the other one was going to follow. So I literally let the first one go. I've never passed a doe to shoot another doe. You know what I mean? It felt silly, but this doe was just so fat. I was like, I have to kill that big one. And so let the first one go, come full draw, whistled. She stopped perfect. She's like 14 yards. Buried the pin right behind the shoulder where I always shoot deer. That's where I like to shoot deer. And I guess I shot her right, like 3 inches to the right and high, and just buried it in her vertebrae of her neck.
Oof.
And she just fell right over, died immediately. Like just separated her vertebrae like how you would kill a chicken, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And just immediate death. And the other doe just stops and turns and looks back at the other doe like, what are you doing? Get up. You know? Like, why'd you just fall?
But here we're laying down here in the wide open in the middle of the maples.
They're in the rut too. Don't sleep on just shooting a doe and leaving it there all day if you shoot it in the morning.
Right. I've heard that. I've heard that. So I was like, all right, it's probably 25 minutes of daylight left. And that other doe bounded up a little bit, but then was still hanging out. And it was a big mature doe as well, just not as big as this giant one that I had just killed. So you can only get 1 doe tag, but my uncle has depredation tags to kill several does. So I call him and he answers the phone. He's like, hello. I'm like, Uncle, shh, listen. Hey, with those depredation tags, can I kill 2 does in 1 sit? He's like, absolutely. I'm like, okay, cool. Got to go. I hang up. And I tried to shoot this other doe. I really did. She took her freaking time working back to check out the dead doe. And by the time she had gotten in bow range, she was like 10 yards. I come to full draw and I just couldn't see my pins on her. It had gotten too dark. So I just let down and shoot her off and then got down and got my deer out of the woods. It was a terrible drag uphill with that giant doe that I decided to shoot. And so got the monkey off the back. That felt good. Meat in the cooler. And then I was officially ready to chase bucks at that point.
Yeah. Now, did your wife come on this trip with you, or
No.
was this just a solo Kevin time?
Nope. Just a solo mission. She didn't want to bow hunt. She'd been muzzleloader hunting. Our muzzleloader season opened the weekend prior.
Okay.
And New York's still in bow season at that point, and she didn't want to go back to the bow. She was like having a lot of fun muzzleloader hunting. And she's like, I'm going to stay here, keep hunting with the muzzleloader. I'm like, cool. All right. Well, see you in a week.
And you might have mentioned this earlier. I might have missed it. What were the dates that you were in New York?
Huh. I want to say it was like November 5th through the 10th, something like that.
Okay.
I think it was 5 through 10.
I can't believe that you still had apples on your trees. Well, actually, I can. Our property has been barren of apples since mid to late October.
So all the apples were on the ground. There was like maybe a handful on the trees. And most of the ones on the ground were rotten.
Okay.
They were mostly rotten. There was like a couple that were decent. I'm checking the dates right now just so I can confirm. It was, let's see, I killed that doe on November 6th. This is in Virginia. That's New York. Okay, November 5th was the day I scouted. So yeah, November 5 through 10. Those are the days I was there. 10 was a travel day. So I hunted 6 through 9. Scouted
Okay.
5, hunted 6 through 9.
Okay. Cool.
So then I went to, after that, I went to one of the pins that I dropped that I was really excited about, that I dropped during turkey season. And it was, I can paint the picture here. So it's a saddle. And in that saddle, it's kind of wide open cedars. And there's trails running all through those cedars coming from like 5 different directions. And it's on a side hill, kind of at a low point. Like I said, it's a saddle. And there was all kinds of intersecting trails, a couple scrapes. This is when I scouted it in turkey season. This is what it looked like. And to the east and west of it was thick goldenrod with trails coming out of it. So I was assuming the deer were bedding in that thick goldenrod, dropping down into these cedars and crossing there to get from bedding to other bedding, right? And then there were scrapes in the middle, which just made sense. So I go into that spot, and I could visualize the spot in my head, and I had a pin, but you know how it is. Sometimes you drop a pin and you get in there and you're like, this isn't the right spot.
This don't look familiar.
Yeah, I'm like 50, 60 yards off somewhere because the pins aren't perfect on Onyx,
Sure.
you know?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I'm glancing around and I see the spot off in the distance. I'm like, oh, that's it. And I recognize like a couple trees. I'm like, okay, I need to get over there. Walk over. I'm scouting around, checking it out. Yeah, this is it. This looks great. This sign looked just the same as it did in the fall. Looked fantastic. Trails coming out of east and west from the goldenrod, intersecting down in the cedars, 2 fresh scrapes right there, poop everywhere. I'm like, this will do.
Now
Looking
you
for
we
a tree to
don't
climb.
we don't have to get into the whole story. Like people should definitely go to your podcast where you talked about this to hear the story. But is this where you found the poacher guy? Is this where the guy that wasn't supposed to be there was there?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
I'm with you now. All right.
Yeah. So anyway, long story short, basically, I get into this bottom and I come across a trespasser. So I had to deal with that. And there was some moving parts to that, communicating with my uncle and whatnot about the guy that I had stumbled upon on his property. Long story short, we kicked that guy off the property and I just had lost motivation to hunt this spot. The guy had several trail cameras in there. He'd been hunting in there. I don't know how much or what his style of hunting is or how much he's pressured it, you know. So I was like, well, I'll just go hunt somewhere else. And at this point, it's like 3:30. Like deer are like moving. You know, my uncle's already seen a couple deer. He's been set up for a half hour and he's already seen a couple deer. So I'm like, man, I'm just going to go get in a spot. So I just throw my stand back on my back and just walk clear across the farm to the other side of this parcel. And there's a cut cornfield down at the bottom, kind of similar to the area I killed the doe, but that's a different parcel. And I dropped down into that cut corn and then went up into some maple woods. And I was just like, I'm just going to get in the inside corner of that field. Deer like inside corners. You know, I'll be able to see the whole cornfield. I'll be able to see a ton of woods. Might not kill a deer, but I should see deer and I can learn something and move forward.
At least 50, right?
But, dude, I saw 37 deer that night.
It's amazing.
I saw 37 deer that night.
That's more deer than I've seen this year.
It was insane. I had never seen, I promise you, Virginia's not like that. Not where I hunt. It was insane. I was like, goodness gracious. 5 does crossed behind me, got chased by a little buck. 10 does came out and they're feeding in the corn, like a 10 doe group. I've never seen that in Virginia. Like, you know what I mean? And they get chased by a shooter buck, but that's like 200 yards off. And I watched that. And anyway, just saw a ton of deer that night. So then I go bounce around throughout the week and hunt other areas. But that spot stuck with me. I'm like, man, there's a ton of deer there. Should probably keep that in mind, you know? And so on the last day, the last evening hunt, I was like, all right.
Was it going to be your last day the whole time?
Yeah, because my wife and I had a plan. She's at home working at this point, and she's starting her vacation the next day. And we're going to go to the Virginia lease. And I called her and even tried to like, hey, if I stay for another couple days, and she's like, no, I want to go hunt. And I'm like, all right, fair enough, you know. So I'm like, I got to get it done tonight. I have to get it done tonight. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, pressure's on me. Okay, I'm gonna go back to that spot where I saw 30 deer. I dropped down. So where I had seen all those deer, I was like, I didn't really see where they came from that night. I could see a really good view of the cut corn, but I couldn't see the whole wood line to know where they came out. So my thought process was just, okay, well, let me get to the timber's edge and I'll scout the timber's edge and see where I can find good entrance trails. And then I'll follow that in and get as close to what I assume is the bedding And that's how I'll hunt. Because that's my favorite style of hunting. I don't really like hunting near food sources. I like hunting near bedding
I'm a
areas.
big bedding guy.
So I found a pretty good trail. I followed it in. It went down through some wide open maples and then straight up. And then as it started to drop down again, I could see ahead there was like some high stem count, short saplings and stuff, really thick area, like 100 yards up ahead. And I'm like, okay, these deer have got to be laying in there. That's what I would assume. Found a good trail and I set up on it. And I was like, all right, this will work, hopefully. Literally while I'm hanging my stand, I had a small buck cruise underneath my tree. Like I'm hanging off the side of the tree in the lineman's belt with the platform in my hand. Has a little basket rack 8-pointer cruise underneath me. And I'm like, this is going to work, you know? And then I hang the stand.
Doesn't that just give you such a spike of confidence? You know, you
Dude,
walk
heck
into
yeah.
this spot, especially if it's a new spot or whatever, you know, even whether you're hanging or in the middle of hanging, you've been up there for an hour, but a deer walks right underneath you, has zero clue that you even exist.
Yeah.
That to me fires me up.
Oh, yeah, dude. And it was 1 p.m. So I was like, man, it's going to be a good night, you know? That basket rack 8-pointer cruising at 1 p.m. Like, shoot, yeah. So I climb. About 2 hours go by. I haven't seen another deer. And then right at 3:30, the woods just erupt with deer. Like just 5 does stand up that had been bedded 80 yards from me the whole time. I had no idea they were there. They stand up straight in front of me down where those thick saplings were that I had mentioned prior. And they start working up towards the corn. They walk past me at like 30 yards. 2 more does off further up the ridge. A small buck and 3 does get chased up to my left. And I'm like, man, it is freaking on. So then like 5 o'clock. At this point, I can look left, right, forward, and behind me, and there's deer. And I'm like, there's a buck here somewhere that I'm willing to shoot that I'm just not seeing. I'm going to rattle. So I take the horns down, rattle, 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 hang the horns up. Did like a tendon grunt sequence, rattled again, hang the horns up. And then I start hearing footsteps. There's a ridge that comes from the corn that funnels down into the bottom that I'm hanging in. And this little 6-pointer came right up that ridge. I could have shot him the whole time he was on the ridge. And then he dropped down and he came all the way to the base of my tree to look for where the rattling came from. And he hung out with me for like 20 minutes. It's like 10 minutes of light left, maybe less. And I hear more footsteps coming up that ridge. And I'm like, okay, glance. And I just see a big body. And I'm like, I hope that's a buck. And he continues up the ridge. I catch a quick flash of his horns. And I could tell he was heavy-ish horned, decent. And I was like, man, still can't really tell what he is. And then the feeling crossed my brain of like, last day, 10 minutes of light left, whatever that thing is, I'm shooting him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, at this point, I'm like, all right, I'm shooting this deer. I'm 100% I'm shooting this deer. Let's go in kill mode, you know? Pull the bow off the hook and click on with my release. And he stops right behind a tree where I can't see him. But I know he's on that ridge right here at 40 yards off my right shoulder. So I'm turned around in the stand and I'm like, all right, he's going to come down to this bottom like the 6-pointer did. That's what I'm convinced of because he's going to come to the sound of the rattling too. Well, then the 6-pointer randomly goes back up the ridge. And then the bigger deer starts following him. I'm like, doggone it. I just see his body walking away. And I pull the rangefinder up real quick and I click him. And it said 43. And I was like, all right, Drew, Matt. He didn't stop. Matt. And then he finally stops. And I sunk the pin on him right there at 43. I probably sank it for 5 seconds because I'm like, man, it's a freaking poke, you know? It's the last day. And 43, I let it fly. Just absolutely smoked him. I put the pin like right in front of his rear ham and I watched it just bury into his shoulder. I could see my lighted knock sticking like this far out of his shoulder, like an inch out of his shoulder. And he barreled down the hill and I heard him crash right there. And I was like, dude, I smoked him. I know I did, you know? I was like, I have no idea what he is. He might be a 5-pointer, but I freaking smoked him.
Isn't it amazing how the lighted knocks, like for anyone who shot arrows like bows long enough, you know that it's very hard to trail an arrow that doesn't have a knock on it. But
100%.
isn't it incredible how like you take that shot, you know damn well with the lighted knock if you miss, if you were high, low, what happened? Like it's instantaneous.
Absolutely. Yeah, at 43 yards at last light, I could see that I smoked him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that was awesome. So my uncle's there, and he doesn't get to deer hunt a ton. He's a farmer, and he's super busy. He works like 6 days a week, 365. Crazy busy. And he took the day off to hunt with me. Took 1 day off while I was there. It was all he could manage to swing. And he was like super pumped. I texted him, "Hey, I shot a buck," and he's like, "Cool. Wait for me to track. I want to be part of the process." So I'm like,
Oh, that's
"Absolutely,
awesome.
yeah." So I'm like, "Absolutely." So I'm like, "All right, I'm gonna go walk to my truck, get my good flashlight because I forgot to throw it in my pack because I'm an idiot." And so I was like, "Walk to my truck, get my flashlight, and I'll drive closer, pick my uncle up, and we'll come over here and track." So I go around where the assumed blood trail is. Actually, I walked up to the shot site first, and I just dropped my hat. I was like, "I'll come in here and find my hat, and we'll start there." And then I walked around and I got to the cut cornfield and I started walking to my truck. And I'm walking the edge of that cut corn and I just step on my buck.
No.
Yeah, dude. I just literally stepped. I almost tripped on him. Like he was
Sorry,
just,
sorry, Unc.
yeah, exactly. Oh, found him. Yeah.
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 That's
I was super
awesome, man.
pumped.
That's great. So first time deer hunting New York, you punched a doe tag and a buck tag, man.
Yeah, I was blessed, man.
That's
Fortunate
awesome.
for sure. It was fun.
Um
Super cool property.
that and it's so amazing how it's so different from my New York property. You know, we talked in the last episode 130 acres we have. There's not a single oak tree. There's some terrain, but it's not like mountainous. It's nothing like that. We have one finger coming off of one property, one finger coming off of another, and one major drainage that goes basically through the center of the property. That's pretty much the layout of ours. And then, the one end, it's got, the benches that come around the one finger, and then the other side, there really aren't any benches. It's just a gradual, like a flow down.
Mm-hmm.
And not, again, not a single mast producing tree anywhere, not one. So
Gotcha.
it's just, it's very different, you know.
Yeah, man.
Um,
Absolutely.
so the antlers that you're using, are they real antlers, black rack, the rattle bag? Like what kind of antlers are you using when you're calling?
They're real antlers. Yeah. It's
Okay.
2 8-point sheds, 4-point, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
4 on each side. And
Sure.
I just cut the brow tines off with a hacksaw and
Mm-hmm.
taped up the bottoms in electrical tape and then drilled a hole and tied them together with
Tie them
paracord. And
together and
that's what I carry. Yep,
something
exactly.
like
That's how
that.
it went.
Yeah. So,
Those brow tines will tear your hands up if you don't take
yeah.
them off, man.
So just a sidebar for anyone who's
Are they the
interested
same
in.
side or different sides?
Oh, they're the same. Yeah.
Some-
They came off of a buck that my buddy shot that
But
he
I'm
thought was
saying
much bigger.
they're from the same deer, so you have a left and a right, and you hit them together.
Yeah.
Or do you have
Mhm.
two the same side? Some people do that too. They'll have like two lefts or two rights,
Huh.
and they bang the
Interesting.
back.
No, they're
side.
from it's
because
from one
it
deer.
keeps you from hitting your fingers. I don't have two. I only have one. Here.
That makes sense. I've never thought about that. Huh.
This one's the opposite. One.
Yeah.
But what they do is they just bang them. They'll bang one into the back of the other one, and then the antlers are always next to each other. You don't have to worry about clipping your fingers or anything like that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Never thought about that.
Another piece of advice I've seen is like you said, cut off the brows, but then all the other points, sand them down, like round off the points. They don't need to be pointy to do what you need them to do.
Can't tell you how many times I've made my knuckles bleed.
Yeah, it's not a
Rattling
matter of
antlers,
being
dude.
sharp that gets your fingers. It's just the blunt trauma of
Yeah.
hitting
Yeah.
it so hard up against your
Right.
finger.
Yeah.
So we are planning on doing a calling series or episode or two at some point. We'd love to have you and kind of pick your brain on the way you call.
Mhm.
One of the things I heard in the past, and I thought this was really cool, someone who is, I honestly couldn't even tell you where the hell I heard this, how long ago it's been, but I heard somewhere that someone believed that the best antlers to rattle with are a matching set of 130 class deer. And I know it's very specific, but basically what the guy said is if you have a typical 130, which is going to have some mass and some length, it's not going to be the biggest deer in the world, but they're big enough. They're long enough that you could get a lot of the clickety clackety as they're, going across each other, but they're fat enough to let the sound resonate. So obviously younger buck, thinner antlers. I personally believe that deer know based on the sound of what's happening if that's even something that they want to entertain or not. So if you have two spikes or two young 4-pointers sparring, I don't know that you're going to get a big mature 8-pointer or 10-pointer to come into that. Simply because he knows the difference in the tones. It's the same thing with a grunt call. The older a deer gets, the deeper that grunt is. They know what they're hearing. So that's kind of
I rattle like two deer are having nuclear war.
Yeah.
I get spikes, 4-pointers, everything comes in. So I guess I'm not saying what you said isn't true. What I'm saying is I think if you hit them at the right time, they're coming.
Yep.
if
I
they're
think it's
interested.
probably, and let me preface this by saying, take this completely with a grain of salt. I am not a calling expert when it comes to deer. I can call the crap out of some turkeys, but I'm not a calling expert when it comes to deer. Um, what was I going to say? Man, I lost my whole train of thought. I think it's probably real similar to turkey hunting. If you're a turkey hunter and you're listening to this, where like you can be the best caller in the woods, you can be Dave freaking Owens from the Peyote Project and call like a grand national champion, or you can be a dude who's never called a turkey in his life and just popped a mouth call in his mouth for the first time. But if a turkey is in the right mood and you yelp on that thing, even if it sounds like garbage, he is coming down the gun barrel because he's just fired up. I feel like, and like I said, again, take this with a grain of salt. I feel like it's probably similar with deer hunting.
Yeah, I believe the same thing.
Like if they're just fired up, they're out there bristled up, they're making scrapes and freaking rubs, and they're just feeling themselves that day, and then you just happen to be within earshot and you bang antlers together and do a little tendon grunt sequence and a snort wheeze, and they're like, "Who the fuck is that?" You know what I mean? And they're just coming, dude. Like,
Because
I
there's
don't
a
know.
lot of
As far
times
as
where
like
I've seen
the
deer and I rattle or I'm trying to get them to come closer and they just don't care.
don't care at all.
The deer my brother shot. We were observing this deer for 2 hours, calling, rustling the leaves, trying to make a disturbance. Could care less.
I mean, like this deer right here, the one over my left shoulder. I don't know if you can see it or not.
Oh.
He was 170 yards away in a clear cut, and I grunted at him once. He looked, kept walking. I grunted at him again. He looked, paused, kept walking. I snort wheezed at him with my mouth, and he sprinted 120 yards all the way into gun range. Well, almost bow range, really. I was hunting with a muzzleloader, but he came to 45 yards, and I shot that deer. Like the
Okay.
snort wheeze, for whatever reason, I'm no calling expert with deer, but I've heard that the snort wheeze is basically like the middle finger in deer language.
Yeah. I've heard the same thing. Yeah.
Dude heard that snort wheeze and just barreled in. I mean,
Now,
and I've had success with the snort wheeze, 2 times since then. And same reaction both times. Like, tried the grunt, didn't work, switched to the snort wheeze, and they just, boom, come in on a beeline, dude.
now, do you only snort wheeze when you have visual of the deer, or do you use snort wheeze in a like? Do you ever use snort wheeze in a blind calling situation?
Yeah, I'll use it blind. Like, I'll do like, what I like to do is like kind of old school. I'll use the green can, right?
Mm-hmm.
Primo's estrus green can.
Mm-hmm.
I'll turn that thing over. Yeah, I'll hit that number, and then I'll wait a couple seconds, and then I'll pull my tube out and just bet, bet, and kind of go around the tree, hopefully making it sound like a buck is chasing a doe. You know, as realistic as I can make.
I
that
do. I do the same thing.
from 20 foot up in a
I'll
tree.
do that.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll pull the horns down. I'll wait a couple minutes. I'll do like one roar, and then I'll snort wheeze from the other direction. So like I'll roar over here, and then I'll snort wheeze over here. Try to make it sound like they're doing this. You know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it makes any difference. It's just what I do. And then I'll rattle. Kind of like set the stage, you know, rather than just going into a rattle. Like I'm like, okay, a buck's he's tending this doe, and then another buck comes up and he's like, well, I want to tend that doe. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they're gonna have their bout about it.
Yeah. So we're at 100. We're at 100. We're at an hour and 20 minutes here. So I'm gonna interject with this real quick. I want to ask you about your setup, and then we're gonna wrap it up. I know you've had a long day.
Cool. Sounds good, man.
Now, what I've started doing, which is really cool, is like I told you. First off, this sit where I shot the deer with the bow and didn't get the recovery and called all these, 100% the best sit of my entire life. I was grunting deer in. I was rattling deer in. I felt like there wasn't a time I hit a call that a deer didn't come into me that morning.
That's awesome.
It was so much fun. I never saw a shooter buck, but I saw legal bucks. Nothing I wanted to shoot, but
Yeah.
I don't. So when I first called in, and those like I said, I hit the grunt, I hit the rattle. This deer started coming in. I heard the leaves, and I could hear the cadence, and I knew it was a deer. And then it stopped. I waited like a minute, and that's when I hit the grunt call, and she came hauling ass. And then again, the second doe came in, shot at the second doe, and right when I shot, literally within 10 seconds of me shooting, I hear grunting coming up over the ridge. And the first thing that goes through my mind is, oh my God, I should have waited. Thankfully, it wasn't a shooter. Now, backtrack, mind you, on my climb, I dropped a stick. 2 out of my 3 arrows came out of my quiver. My third
Goodness
arrow
gracious.
was dangling off of my quiver as I got it up. My hat fell off of my camera arm while I was setting up. Bro, it was the hands down the worst setup in my last 3 years. And it turned out to be my best sit. So I was upset. I was frustrated because I hear this grunting coming, and I just shot my only arrow at this doe. And when that buck came in, it was really cool because he came in, saw my lighted knock, went up to it, smelled it. I have this on film with, I think it's on my phone. He came in, smelt the arrow, did like a jump, kind of looked at it, and then acted like it wasn't there. Just sat around feeding around, like literally walked a full circle around my tree. It was awesome. It was just a great setup. But anyway, real quick, I'm interested to hear about your setup. I know that you use sticks, you use a hang-on type of setup. I know that you've said you've tried a saddle a couple times and you're not crazy about them so far.
Yep.
And you prefer to hunt with a firearm from a climber.
Yep.
So I think you use a Summit, if I'm not mistaken, right? For your climber, or am I?
For climber, yep.
Okay.
Summit Viper.
So that's pretty much, we all know what that is. Tell us about your setup, like your sticks and your hang on.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick before we jump into that, I want to touch one last thing on the calling thing.
Sure.
Man, when you rattle antlers together and then hang them up and then just immediately hear, dude, that gets me fired up.
Oh my, yeah.
Even if you don't know what it is, it could be a 4-pointer, right? Like I rattle in a lot of small bucks. I don't know if it has something to do with my calling technique. I'm no expert, or they're just really responsive to calling because they're young and dumb.
There's also more, I would imagine, more younger
There's
bucks in
more
the
of them,
woods than
yeah.
older bucks. Yeah.
For sure. But man, dude, when you bang those antlers together and hang them up and then hear footsteps coming, dude, that gets me going, dude. That just gets me so excited.
Yep. Because for that split second, it could be the biggest deer in the world.
Here he comes. You know what I mean? Like the deer of my life.
Reaching for the bow, and then it's a doe, and you're like, I'm just gonna put this back.
Yeah. Oh man. Anyway, so I have the package. You can buy it actually as a package. It's called the XOP Bump and Dump.
I know the one. Yep.
If you're a first responder, you get a huge discount for your listeners. Any listeners of the Wing and Tail that's a first responder, get a massive discount. I mean, it's like significant, 35% off, something like that.
Wow.
And yeah, it's a big discount. And anyway, it's the smallest platform that they offer. I didn't need a big platform. And that's one thing I don't love about like the saddle thing. Like, it's a really small platform, and you're kind of restricted, in my opinion, to the way you can move. I know guys like that saddle hunt will probably argue that with me to the grave, and that's fine. But like I can hunt 360 degrees in my hang on. I can turn around and I can shoot everywhere but directly behind me. You know what I mean? And I can move really good in that thing. It's the smallest platform and then the smallest sticks that XOP makes. They're called the X2s. I think they're like 18 inches.
Yep.
I use 4 sticks. They clip together. They've got the little bracket clips on the side of the stick. So 2 sticks clip together, and then they go down on the platform. They fit in behind the seat. And then I have the J hooks with the little, plastic bracket that goes around the sticks, and it J hooks to the platform. And then you twist it down with a wing nut, and that holds it all together. And then I carry an aider. It's a 3-step aider. It's just webbing material, and I hang that on the bottom stick.
Okay.
And I can get like 27 foot with my 4 sticks and my aider. Yeah, I can get way up there.
Oh my God. How tall are you?
I'm 6 foot.
Oh, geez.
But I'll put
that explains it. Yeah.
I'll put a stick every like 5 foot 5 inches. Like I can separate them out pretty dang good. And then you can step up, pull yourself up, step up, pull yourself up. It takes a little bit more effort if I really want to get that high. Go ahead.
Do you move your aider with you? Like, do you take your aider off of one stick and move it to the other, or is it only on your first stick?
Only on the first stick, yeah.
Okay.
So the first stick goes at like the bottom of the first stick goes just above my head. Like it goes about like right here. Right? And then the aider hangs down from that. The aider's like 4.5 foot long. It's a long aider. And that hangs down, and I climb up the aider. I hate climbing the aider, to be honest with you. That part sucks. But I always just tell myself, like, get through the aider, and then it'll be easy. And then once I get through the aider, then I'll climb my way up. I use the lineman's belt, and then that's what I do. And then I carry a small backpack, very small backpack. It's probably like this big. And inside the backpack, I throw all the straps in the big compartment. The little compartment has like my pruning shears, my limb saw, my calls, rattling horns, stuff like that. Blah blah
Oh, it's
blah.
so nice to not have to carry the camera gear.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. And then in the big compartment, I throw 6 cinch straps. I use the cinch straps. I don't like the paracord or the whatever guys are using now. I like the cinch straps. They're just they're
Okay.
reliable and easy.
Mm-hmm.
They're big and cumbersome, but I just throw them in the backpack, call it a day. You know, 6 of those and an 8er goes in my backpack, and then like a jacket or whatever that I'm gonna wear
What do you
once
need
I get in the
6
stand.
for?
1 for each stick, and then 2 for the platform.
Yeah.
Use a
So
cinch strap for each stick?
Yeah, 1 cinch strap for each stick. Yep.
Oh, okay.
do you have the? I'm just going to come on that. Do you have the cold world, or do you have the retro, or
No,
do you have the retrograde?
I think it's called a vanish. Is what it's called. You talking about the platform?
You have the platform I just got rid of.
Oh, really?
I loved that platform, but it was 12 and a half pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Bro, I got to tell you, if you're into compact, lightweight, don't need a massive platform, you have to look into the retrograde. That's
What makes
what
that?
that XOP. It's one of the
Oh, okay.
two new stands, one of the two new platforms that they just came out with.
Okay.
The retrograde is a super slimline platform. It's made as a hybrid. I actually started hybrid hunting with it. Last time
Right
we
on.
spoke, I told you how I sold all of my saddle gear because I didn't like the platform. I didn't feel comfortable in it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, once I sold it, immediately I regretted it, and I ended up getting the retrograde, and everything has completely changed for me. I'm
Huh.
able to I basically hunt as if I'm in a stand, like normal, except now I'm able to lean back. I'm able to take the pressure off of my back, and actually, I know you've been having some back problems as of late. I have lower back issues also, and being able to position that the saddle so that way the pressure is on my lower back where I have the pain. It almost has
Mm-hmm.
the same effect as like a lumbar support. It's
Mm.
fantastic.
That sounds
Um,
nice.
yeah, but it's also very slim. The platform weighs 6.4 pounds, I believe, or
Wow.
6.5 pound. Dude, it is a complete game changer.
Is it
You
small
know,
like the vanish?
it is smaller than the Vanish. It is
Oh, right
like
on.
it is, dude. When I tell you,
I'm already
it's
sold.
maybe so like obviously like standard notebook. It's
Yeah.
probably almost 2 notebooks from front to back, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe like another 4 or 5 inches wider than a notebook. At
Okay.
5'6", it's just wide enough for me to turn around and just barely have my feet not touch the cables. Like
Right on.
it's perfect. But like
Are
for
you sure
some
you're not
like
like a sales rep for XOP on the side? Because you just sold me on that platform.
honestly, I'm really not. But XOP, if you're listening in here, bro, you gotta at the very least something for our listeners, like a little code or something. You know what I mean? But no, man, seriously, especially if you get that first responder discount, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I have so much respect for anybody who does that. Um, give it a shot. And the reason I'm asking is, I was getting to that is because I never thought I'd be in a saddle, and I now can't imagine running anything other than what I have. And
Right on.
XOP also has a true hybrid saddle harness where you wear
Yep.
it just like a normal harness. You know, it goes around your legs. You have your shoulder straps. It attaches at the waist, but it's got the loops at your waist for the saddle. So you could
Mm-hmm.
choose to wear it like a saddle, or it's got the neck loop for you to
That's
connect
cool.
it like it's a regular harness.
Yeah.
You
I have a
know,
buddy that
so
uses that and he loves it.
yeah, it honestly it's great. And hearing the style of hunting that you like to do, be mobile, get into these 4 inch long, wide trees, apple
Yeah.
trees and shit, you know, like
Yeah.
that would have been, you know, it just sounds like it would have been perfect for you. So if that's something you're interested in trying out, you know, maybe we're supposed to get together for turkey season. I would love to still do that.
Absolutely.
We have plenty of time to work that out. But if we get together in the off season, I'd be more than happy to let you, you know, try it out before you spend the money
Yeah.
on it,
Yeah,
and
for
we
sure.
and we can take it from there. If you're already a hang on guy, at the very least, the weight difference, it's literally half the weight of what you're running now. So I had the
I
air
can't wait.
raid. I had the air raid Vanish. I think I had the next model. There was the Vanish and then the air raid Vanish. I think right.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
I
believe that's correct.
yeah, I had the air raid and I absolutely loved it. I was just trying to other than the weight. That's the only reason I switched.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So, Ange, you have anything else to add? Any other questions to ask?
No, that's it. I mean, we're gonna probably get together. I think on Kevin's page soon, so keep an eye out for that too. We hope that we can continue to do more content with you, and you know we'll just keep everybody updated. Stay tuned for our next episode. The Wing and Tail Boys has a couple podcasts that are going to get posted. We obviously were away hunting for the rifle season. We're going to post our older episodes from the Empire Podcast Network on our YouTube channel. And I think Thanksgiving Day we have the video from New York coming out. So stay
Right
tuned
on.
for those things. And we thank everybody for all the new subscribers and all the new people interacting with our content. Our most recent video has been doing really well. I think we're up to 11,800 views on that video, and we
Heck
saw
yeah.
that a lot of people like that format of the review of our gear and gun setups and the different combinations of ammo that we're going to be using. So we're going to be looking to do a little bit more of that. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Yeah, and I think based off the response Kevin just gave me, I think I need to make a review video for the retrograde because
Yeah.
that thing is freaking awesome. Kev, I'm going to give you a chance to plug your stuff where people can find you. But real quick before we get into that, I just want to thank our sponsors and our partners real quick. Angela, you want to talk on Andover Hunt and Fish real quick?
Andover Hunt and Fish is outfitter over here in northern New Jersey. They have everything you need as far as hunting apparel, bows, a bow tuning station, new and used guns, and tons of accessories with a huge fishing department as well, tackle, rods, reels, all different things to get you on the water as well, kayaks, life jackets, and they have a really big live bait section as well. So if you're in the area, check them out and let them know Wing and Tail sent you.
Awesome. And same goes for Big D Custom Shops, guys. If you're in Northern Jersey, bow specific, this is a bow specific shop. They also deal with custom bowling balls and custom embroidery. That's Big D's Custom Shops over in, I believe it's what did I say? Franklin, New Jersey.
You say
When you,
something different every time.
what I do. I can't,
I
when
think
you
I'm
look
thinking
it
of
up on,
Pacong
when you
or
look it up on
Jefferson.
the computer, it says that's it, Jefferson. When you look it up on the computer, it says Lake Apacon. They're in Jefferson. Either way, it's on Route 15. Chris is awesome. Anthony there is the bow tech. He's awesome. I promise you guys, if you walk in there and go and spend some time with them, you will be laughing from the moment you get there to the moment you leave. It's just a great environment, great people, and a great way to spend your time. And I promise you, you won't be disappointed if you check them out. Again, that's bow specific stuff, bowling balls, and embroidery. We also have Fire Knock LLC. We have an awesome arrow, the science of arrow flight series. We're going to be starting to record that, I believe, next week. That's going to air on the YouTube channel first, and then we're going to air it again on the podcast network when it becomes more relevant information or that time, that time of the year where it's going to be better. But we're going to talk about things like what affects the arrow in flight, what affects the arrow before flight, what changes can you make to your arrow to help make it more efficient, why you want a more efficient arrow, and so much more. So keep an eye out for that. And in the meantime, head on over to fireknock.com for any arrow components or any information on the science of arrow flight. We also have dart and bows. I shoot a Darton right now. I absolutely love it. It holds steady, shoots well, shoots straight. Awesome bow so far. We have Antler Grow. They make products for your food plots, but not just for food plots. If you got some grasses or even just some woody browse that you really want the deer to be by, just go ahead and spray them. So far, I have not had any disappointments with these products. I use them in my food plots this year, and they've worked out great. And last but not least, we have Cuddy back cameras with their Cuddy Cell Link. Honestly, the system is incredible. Guys, you pay for one cell service, and you can have up to 25 cameras on that one cell plan. It is incredible. It's a great way to save money, and it's a great way to inventory one piece of land, whether that's public land or private land. So head on over to Cuddy Back Cameras and check out their line of products today. With that being said, Kevin, we love having you on our podcast. Thanks again for joining us today. And take a minute, plug yourself. Where can people find you? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, man. So Mid-Atlantic Outdoorsman podcast on podcast and Spotify. On Instagram, we're mid_Atlantic_Outdoorsman, and then Mid-Atlantic Outdoorsman on Facebook. So Appreciate you guys having me, man. It's always fun talking to you guys. Every time I get on here, I lose track of time and
Yeah.
run it way too long.
Congratulations, the
But
first trifecta, tri-state trifecta complete.
I appreciate
And,
it, man. I
Kevin
appreciate it.
Creeley's got showed us how to do it, and we're gonna have to follow suit.
I don't know about all that. So you got to do something. But
Yeah. Right.
Done. It's done. So,
That's great, man. It is always great to have you on. So again, thank you for joining us. And until next time, guys, remember, success is just a commitment away. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be back with you guys soon.
peace.
bye.